Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to our Thursday talks at IHM Aurangabad. Today, we bring you yet another thought provoking session in our ongoing webinar series of Renewing Resurgence. Today's session will be on evolving events in 2021. To begin with, I would like to introduce our panelists who are joining us from different parts of India and country. We welcome our first panelist, Ms. Nanki Chawla, a proud alumnus of IHM Aurangabad from the class of 2009, who began her career in food and beverage service with Taj Hotels, Resorts and Palaces. In year 2015, she founded her own event company called Nanki Chawla Events, known for delivering sophisticated concern concepts to their clients. They provide complete wedding solutions. Our second panelist is Mr. Akshay Mangalagiri, another proud alumnus of IHM Aurangabad from the class of 2010, who started his career journey with Marriott International in food and beverage service, then moved to revenue and later served tenure with Intercontinental Hotels Group as Crown Meetings Director in Ahmedabad and Bengaluru. Apart from being awarded as Best Meeting and Events Leader 2015 in India by ISG, he is also the recipient of Best Crown Meeting Director for MICE for IMEA region, that is India, Middle East and Africa for year 2016. Mr. Mangalagiri has been a passionate sales and marketing professional. He is currently serving as Director of MICE at Four Seasons Bengaluru and a member of Asia Pacific Regional Sales Performance Committee for Four Seasons Hotels and Resort. Our next panelist is Mr. Varun Raj Khullar, who has extensive experience working for brands like Ritz-Carlton, JW, and Courtyard by Marriott. He is the founder of Modern Catering Group, a pioneer in destination wedding in India and abroad. He is a firm believer that creativity is the purest form of magic. Mr. Khullar has spent close to 2 decades in the banqueting and catering industry. The core aim of MCG, that's how they love to be called as, is not only to provide a progressive and bespoke catering experience to the customers, but to also take them on a gastronomical adventure. Our last panelist, Mr. Ayush Tyagi, currently is not able to log in due to some emergency, who is currently the Director of Food and Beverage at Sheraton Grand Doha Resort Convention Hotel, Qatar. He has been devotedly serving tenure with multiple hotels under the brand umbrella of Marriott International. Mr. Tyagi has handled event operations for Renaissance Hotel Mumbai and pre-opened and led the team at JW Marriott Sahar. Finally, the moderator for today's session is Mr. Gautam Sen, who is the Associate Professor and Course Administrator for both the undergraduate programs at the IHMA. Thank you, panelists, for joining us today. And now I pass on the proceeding to Mr. Sen. Over to you, Mr. Sen. Mr. Sen, your mic is on mute.
Thank you, Ocean. We have such a diversified, experienced professionals. So I'm sure this evening going to be a wonderful learning experience for all of our hospitality students and professionals who are at present online. And we have very interesting you know, thought processes from all these professionals related to the uh, present status of hospitality events and its future. We all know that events and conferences, exhibitions, uh, these business events, these are huge part of hospitality industry and they are continuing to grow. So whether it be the focus on music, sports, learning or luxury, events around the world are generating billions of revenue and changing the way of doing business. And hospitality organizations uh, and hospitality operations are very closely connected to it, and we are having a kind of a symbiosis relationship. So meeting, conferences, events, exhibitions are the key driver of tourism destinations across the globe. And thus, across the globe, particularly in the destinations and market, we realize that the event are the vital components of attracting customers, and without them, we are actually at a risk. But then came the pandemic, which has definitely disrupted the way consumer behaving and the way event organizers are also thinking of. And that leads us to ask certain relevant questions to our panelists and to hear where the industry is really going ahead. So I will begin with Akshay, being the director of Mice Business. Akshay, what are the key challenges you know that are there at present in the business? How has the Mice event perspective is changed today?
Okay, firstly, I'd like to thank Ocean for the brilliant introduction and the IHMA team for having all of us back as panelists today. Uh, when it comes to mice, I mean, what is mice in today's market? Ha ha ha! It's a joke because there isn't much mice. Mice, as soon as the COVID effect entered or was felt in the Indian market, mice fell faster than the Berlin Wall itself, or faster than Humpty Dumpty's Great Fall. Having said that, today, as we sit today here in A or B grade cities, mice is tending to gradually take place in various other forms. The very core DNA or the way mice is held has a remarkable transformation when it comes to how mice events are held. For example, let me take you back to about March 2020, just before the pandemic hit our markets. Mice contributed to approximately about 40 to 60% of that month's revenue in terms of food and beverage as well as room sales. Soon after that, in April, once the lockdown, it was nil. Gradually, after the unlock, we first started seeing mice movements in December, early December, and then in Jan. Uh, Feb, it's almost up to about 5% of the hotel's business. However, mice has been replaced effectively since September by social events. Social, by the meaning of social, it could be weddings, birthday parties, etc., with the stringent laws in place, stringent norms in place, whether it's interstate movement or inter-country movement. MICE has definitely taken a hit. But our perspective on MICE has to change, or our strategy on MICE has to change with the evolving state of affairs in the hospitality industry. For example, it's very, the way MICE is being held today is basically, it all depends on the type of organization which is hosting MICE. For example, last month, Ola, a company like Ola, had to hold their annual employees meet, which generally comes under MICE, which is meetings, incentives, conferences, and exhibitions. They had an online meeting and contracted with a particular hotel in the city like Bangalore, where 5,000 boxes, packed boxes, had to be delivered to various locations. And that is how MICE is evolved effectively during COVID times. I mean, I could never believe that mice would evolve in this way. However, I mean, there are many other companies which host similar mice events. Uh, in the beginning, pre-COVID, mice was effectively propelled by A, transportation, air travel, railways, as well as roadways, B, infrastructure-wise, which was hotels, convention centers, lawns, or such kind of establishments. Today, that has been replaced by technology partners, very much like Microsoft Teams or Zoom, if I may have to say. So the canvas on which mice is basically drawn has changed. However, situation is not that bleak. We do see uh, mice coming back into the city by as early as August if things may continue the way it is. However, hotels like Four Seasons, the Marriott, or the Hiltons or the Hyatt, which are backed by strong owner-driven capital, have begun to invest in technology such as spotlights, lights, follow-up cameras, LED screens, etc. For example, we have one event booked for the next week where they're going to be addressing about 4,000 attendees within their company, and they've taken my entire grand ballroom as such, uh, with a large LED screen at the back, which is basically going to show each and every attendee who's attending, and it's a virtual conference. So yes, there is a revenue, but it is not the same as what it was during the pre-COVID times. Uh, used to be the largest, some of the largest contributing channels in hotels, where they effectively raise income for banqueting, rooms, in-room dining, restaurants, transportation, other minor operating departments. Well, today it is still not the same. Nonetheless, we're crossing our fingers, hoping MICE bounces back by at least early as August. So yes, this is what the perspective of MICE is.
Thank you so much, Akshay. Really very useful insight related to the business, and yeah, lots of it that we are looking up to, because our industry's future is associated with it. But along with the business segments of the events, there is another segment of business which is very strongly associated with hospitality and hotel businesses, and particularly hotel operations. And initially it was started as a social events, but today we are not able to call it as only as a social events. So if somebody says that marriages are made in heaven, the grandeur and the extravagance of wedding are definitely made in India. To put
Very true.
things in the perspective, the estimated value of Indian wedding business is over $50 billion annually. You know, so due to the pandemic, of course, the usual fervor of the big fat Indian wedding have given way to downsize to a kind of more miniature ceremonies this year. But one can definitely say that the love for weddings in Indians are not done with. So my question goes to Nanki. What paradigm shift wedding industry is witnessing today?
Thank you, everyone. Firstly, what a pleasure to be back in this, in this format, nonetheless. But what a pleasure to be back, and what an esteemed panel we have today. And some of them I know personally, some of them I know professionally. Thanks for having us back here. Akshay had some really interesting points he put forth. So, I feel I've learned a lot from listening to him as well. But as we all know that the hospitality industry and all the allied businesses along with that, one of which is events and weddings, has been hit really, really hard last year. And it's actually quite remarkable how certain allied industries have been able to shift gears really, really fast. And not only adopt new practices, but also kind of stay afloat through 2020, which has been a rather tough one for us. Um, Health and well-being and safety has been utmost priority, for everyone. And one of the foremost trends that came out through this challenging time last year was something we now know as micro weddings, So this was actually a government norm where we weren't allowed to host weddings more than 50 people. But suddenly this has become one big trend, and intimate weddings or smaller scale weddings are being preferred more to the big fat Indian weddings, where the spend capacity of our clients hasn't changed. If someone can afford an X amount, they will still go ahead to spend that X amount. However, it will be divided amongst a fewer number of people, which means there is a lot more effort in terms of each of the each of the details that go into putting it together. So this was one very exciting trend that came up. I think through the next year, we're still going to continue to see a lot of these restricted numbers, of intimate weddings. The other interesting part is, and the wedding industry has never been known to adopt technology in a big way, but having had the situation that we were in, and travel was so restricted and movement was so restricted, online streaming of wedding functions and using, as Akshay was pointing out, technology in terms of Zoom or YouTube Live. So these online wedding streamings became really fun and exciting, and it was almost like having all your loved ones from all around the world with you to witness this milestone occasion. Yet they weren't really, in your circumference, in your area, but virtually everyone was available. So I think this is something also that can, as a trend, it can kind of stay on. We might just see a lot more of it, because while India practices in India and the situation in India is getting better, there are countries that are still struggling to kind of get things together for themselves. But lastly, the responsibility towards hygiene, safety, and health practices for all the vendors involved. And I think this one is really here to stay. It's going to get a lot more priority compared to anything else. So, in terms of the hygiene practices by a catering team or by the venue of choice, say if it's a hotel, a resort, a banquet hall, if it's your teams that are participating on ground that are going to be in close proximity with the family, with people, anyone who's going to be in close proximity with people will have to put forth their best practices in terms of health and hygiene and sanitization, and that's one to stay. I'm glad it's come as a learning, and those key vital practices, I think, are here to stay. So for the paradigm shift, I think we've seen some really exciting changes. We've also adopted some measures that have helped us temporarily stay afloat, but I think we've got a good year planned ahead, and hopefully things should come back into good speed. Thanks, Gautam. Thank you.
Thank you, Nanki. Thank you so much. Brilliant insight related to wedding industry and the way the event industry is progressing. And that gives me an opportunity to bring about another very interesting part about event. And we all know this is an integral part of any kind of event. I'm talking about food. No event is complete without food, and they play a very significant role, particularly for social events and special events. So at the same time, catering operations are associated with numerous criticality, be it is consumer food habits and preferences to the on-site food delivery operation, from health and hygiene issues to regulatory concerns, bringing the expertise and delivering according to the mood and theme of the event. Large-scale event catering is definitely a specialized industry. But with the pandemic, the scenario has changed. We found there are restrictions, people mindset has changed about. Under that circumstances and amid uncertainty, my question to Mr. Khullar, uh, what are the key challenges and best practices for a large scale event catering today? Over to you, Mr. Khullar.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank IHM and Ocean for giving me the opportunity to interact with everyone. I think it's been a great learning listening to Akshay, Nanki, and everybody. Obviously, the way we do weddings, celebrations, and events has drastically changed in the past year. The last year has been very volatile and dynamic in nature. In terms of the customer, I think there have been a lot of uncertainties and deliberations in the minds, keeping in mind how many people should we call in weddings, etc. Like Nanki had suggested, micro weddings are a trend now. But I think as restrictions are lifted, a resurgence of the economy and industry is bound to happen. Like they say, weddings are a very big part of our community and culture, and they cannot stop. I think in terms of best practices, collaborating, networking, and synergizing with the right kind of people in your industry, associates, patting each other's back. I think moving in the right direction is the way forward. Having said that, we're also highly focused on customer and staff hygiene through daily temperature checks, keeping our kitchen sanitized, following all WHO hygiene protocols. Last but not the least, I think what is very important and imperative is training the staff and retaining the staff, especially in times of difficulty right now. I think training and retaining is the most imperative. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khullar. Again, wonderful insight. And in the first part from all the panelists, we heard about what is really happening at this point of time, particularly in the new stage of normal that we are talking about. But in continuation to that, we are now very interested to know how the future is waiting for us. And I will go to Akshay, asking him that we know that behavioral change in consumer and all of us has already taken place, and it is definitely changing the future of the events. So as technologies become part of our everyday life, and our willingness to adapt is reflected in the attitudes of particularly in the business events and MICE events that we are looking at. Organizers are also showing that kind of attitude in terms of carrying out significant part of event activity utilizing different digital technologies. So that has given rise to a different kind of aggregator altogether, who are definitely started playing a big role. Under such circumstances, how hotel is looking at, how are hotels strategizing to attract these business opportunities in the MICE segment? Over to you, Akshay.
Thank you, Mr. Sen. That was a wonderful question and isn't a very easy question. To get to the crux or the bottom of what your question is hospitality professionals, number one, need to understand what sort of a market they are in. For example, Bangalore versus Bombay. Bombay per se is a very front-end market, is what we call in the industry. You got companies like Louis Vuitton, Accenture, IBM, Oracle, Cisco, etc., where the sales teams or the board of directors sit. Versus a market like Bangalore. Bangalore is also an IT market, could be called the Silicon Valley of India. However, Bangalore hosts various facilities for back-end operations for such companies, for example, BPOs, finance, HR, procurement, training, and etc. In order to strategize to capture opportunities, we have various elements to think of. One is the type of market, your brand's recall, and your brand strategy, to keep it in a nutshell. For example, a brand like a Sheraton or a Sheraton Grand or a Renaissance with a very large banqueting hall can make a quick move without diluting their brand equity in order to capture certain types of MICE business. Now, MICE business all depends on your supply and demand of venues or inventory depending on the period of the year. So dilution of rates or revenue optimization of rates is very easy for such brands. Vis-a-vis a brand like Four Seasons or St. Regis, Waldorf Astoria, or Conrad for that matter, find it very difficult because these brands have been designed right from infrastructure or their standard operating procedures to cater to a very different market. They do cater to MICE, but probably not at the volumes in which a Sheraton or a Renaissance operate at. So it is very important to understand your brand positioning, your brand recall, and the market you are in. However, looking at the current scenario, it is more of a top line game than just profitability. So brands do need to change strategies in order to stay alive, in order to reduce hiring or firing. And most of us have turned into a shadi hotel right now because MICE per se probably does not exist as what we think it does in the market. But coming August or September, all of us are gearing up for MICE, various types of MICE. Like I've said in my previous answer, MICE has evolved for the moment into more of a virtual event, but that is is not sustainable. For example, if you had to take your students to Sula for a wine tour versus a virtual tour of Sula where they can only read about wines but not taste, is not a sustainable answer. The very meaning of MICE, which is meetings, incentives, conferences, and exhibitions, talks about incentivizing your audience, your employees, your business partners, your channel partners, and your salesmen in order to gain, communicate, and put in extra effort. And that cannot be done virtually because there is an element of human interaction that is missing. So, yes, we are extremely positive about regaining MICE movement, but at the same time, MICE is not going to be as profitable as before due to the current norms, social distancing norms, hygiene norms, whatever you may call it, that is in place. For example, a ballroom which is about 5,800 square feet earlier could have about 500, 450 people. Now they're limited to about 200 and 250. So the entire revenue strategy in terms of rentals, APCs, everything changed. So that will definitely have an impact on your bottom line as well as your top line. So it's all up to the brand how they strategize the importance of MICE when compared to the pre-COVID era. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Akshay. Brilliant insight, very, very interesting dimensions and customer centricity that we heard from you. And taking that particular point in terms of the customer centricity and picking out more, personalized solution, I will go to Nanki and ask, related to the question. In terms of the wedding events. So Nanki, you were in the hospitality operation more than a decade, and you have seen the transformation of wedding events from major social gathering to a professionally managed industry. So over the past few years, if we look at several organized wedding aggregators, digital wedding services have mushroomed across India, and thereby they are driving transparency, standard procedures, implementing written contracts and quality. So my question to you that how wedding industry is going to emerge in future?
Thank you for that question. Really interesting point. I think I have been a part of the industry just when it was transitioning from a very, as you rightly pointed out, considerably social event to an extremely organized marketplace where, importance of contracts, importance of SOPs, importance of efficiency, training, all of this started ranking really high if an organization or a brand was to survive and was to come up with a very effective and successful execution of these weddings. People have had now high demands. Spend capacity has also really increased, and it's very interesting because one always has to be on top of their game so as to not have any loose ends left and no scope for complaint, as if I may put it in that. But Varun rightly pointed out the wedding industry is really integral to our culture. It's not going to stop, and it's a very emotion-driven industry. So apart from your SOPs, over time one gathers the experience to deal with a whole bunch of emotions, which is very crucial and critical when you're on ground, when you're managing and bringing together everything that you've sort of planned and worked on for months prior to the actual dates of the wedding. And I feel, we're expecting a very big bounce back towards the end of the year. Restrictions are easing out, vaccinations are being administered very effectively in our country. Protocols have been put in place. Just 2 days ago, I finished a 250 people wedding where each guest was tested for COVID. We did an RT-PCR for each and every guest. Those who got vaccinated, we did antibody tests for them. Each vendor on ground, from your catering staff to your catering supervisor to the bartenders to the photographers, planners and their team, everyone was tested and admitted into the premises only if they had a negative report, So all these protocols are in place, but we also still have this huge segment of clients who are just waiting for things to settle down a little more, for this emotional sense of comfort to come in, that it's going to be a safe space to celebrate in. And also, they're waiting to have that quintessential big fat Indian wedding. And I feel that's kind of going to explode with quite a bang towards the end of the year. Interestingly, how Akshay pointed out, at this point, weddings are a huge source of revenue for all these allied industries. I mean, for me, it's allied. Hotels for one, transport and logistics for the other, airlines as well. We've started having people who are doing destination weddings, who are planning destination weddings. So I think right now, because the weddings are in the center of a lot of this revenue generation, it's also going to be given a lot more in terms of customization from all these different businesses. So we're really looking forward to that. We've got great support from the people we work with. If it's the Taj, be it the Sheraton, be it the Taj, be it the Marriott, be it some exclusive caterers like Varun sitting right here. So I think everyone's going to come together really well, and everyone's going to work together in terms of collaboration. And by the end of the year, I think we're all going to be back on our feet, raring to go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nanki. Thank you for providing such a detailed insight, particularly related to the health and hygiene concern and how large-scale events are sensitizing them and bring it into the operation. And that actually allows me to take this question to Mr. Khullar related to food event and catering operation. So we have heard about lots of customization. We are looking at new health policies and regulations. Also, consumers and operators are also kind of concerned and aware of the health norms, and they are definitely putting lots of influence in the overall operation. So my question to you, so what are the emerging trends in large-scale event catering, and what is the future lying ahead? Over to you, Mr.
I think when I talk about my company, Modern Catering Group, we've introduced a lot of bespoke concepts and emerging trends like pop-up restaurants, fine dining experience zones, bringing in some of the world's most exclusive and Michelin star restaurant brands like Zuma, Nobu, Koya, Nusrat from around the world. Having said that, I think taking the game above and beyond, we've also manifested in getting cutting edge technology in events, weddings, and celebrations. Some of the radical technological advances that we've made is that we've used robotics for our caterings. We've used drones to hang food, to create those kind of experience zones for the customers. We've also introduced a concept called flying catering, on which we've got hoverboards. There are servers serving you snacks and appetizers, especially in times of social distancing. It's a very emerging trend. Taking the game above and beyond, we've also introduced automated food counters with zero human contact using artificial intelligence. So these are some of the emerging trends that we've introduced as a company using technology. Having said that, the focus obviously remains on quality, customer interaction, creativity, evolution, and innovation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khullar. Wonderful insight again, and we really get to know about how technology is really transforming the emergence and future of event, particularly in event catering and as well as in other dimensions of the event. And with that, we are coming to the end of the event, where today we really get to know some very deep insights and practices about diversified field of events. starting with understanding of the mice market space evolution, market volatility, to customer centricity in the approaches. We got to know about the challenges that is taken up in large scale catering services and application of advanced technology in providing solution in terms of product and services, to the emergence of social events like wedding into a full-fledged catering, a full-fledged event industry, and really showing pathway and light to the overall hospitality and tourism industry together. So beautiful insight. Thank you so much. I will now request Nishant to come in and share if there are questions from our visitors. So our esteemed panelists would be happy to take a look at. Nishant, over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I think we have a first question for Nanki from our students saying that what does it take to be a successful event planner, especially a wedding event planner?
Thank you, Nishant. That's a really interesting question. And I was just thinking to myself that nothing could have prepared me for what the event and the wedding industry holds, like my experience at IHMA and what I learned from the Taj Group of Hotels. It's been really getting into the grind. It's been knowing the ins and outs of the business. It's been dealing with all kinds of people and situations. And I think I could not have become this extremely customer focused organization or brand if it wasn't for what I had learned at the Taj Group of Hotels. So, as cliche as it may sound, I mean, I really wouldn't have evolved into uh, to kind of tackle what this industry throws at us. As I mentioned, it's a highly emotional, emotions driven industry. And I think a lot of Taj's culture of being customer oriented uh, kind of brought that out from me and helped me kind of be prepared for what the industry has to offer. And, the management degree at IHMA is not just a hotel management degree. I think the skills that were instilled in us in the third and the fourth year, were so crucial. And I don't think I gave it enough value back then. But today I realize, the skills of being organized and to deal with problem solving, mechanisms, to put in processes, a lot of training. I mean, all these things have come from there. And of course, it takes a bit of experience, good amount of training with, good wedding planners and companies. So it's been roughing it out for many years, but I feel we're in a good space now, and I think we're being recognized in the market. We're being recognized by our customers. So that's where I've come from. Thank you.
I think that's some great insights in terms of how each one's journey from the beginning starts preparing themselves to becoming successful. So you gave us a very good answer, and I think that inspires a lot of our students as well. My next question is for Mr. Varun. As a seasoned caterer, and you would be privy to this, have the margins been affected in even if the weddings are going micro, or are we just earning much more based on smaller events?
Well, definitely the top line and the bottom line both have been affected. Like Nanki had mentioned earlier, micro weddings have become a trend. But having said that, weddings, celebration, and events are a big part of our community and culture. And well, just 2 days back, we had done a 700 people wedding in Delhi. So I think big weddings are coming back. I think after September, October, we should see the trend of micro weddings going away and the big weddings coming back, especially in North India now. So, but yes, right now, and especially in the past year, the economics have been very unstable in terms of both the bottom line and the top line. But to keep your brand afloat in the market, it's very important that whatever you do has to maintain that kind of quality and standard, despite you even losing that kind of money. because especially in food and beverage, and in our industry, is survived on word of mouth. So obviously you cannot, do things that hamper that kind of brand image of yours. So yes, economics have suffered, but I think a resurgence is bound to happen. And like I said, a couple of days back, we did a very big wedding. So I think after September, October, we should see those high ticket, big fat Indian weddings progress. Thank you.
That's really good to hear that, we are back and we see the big fat Indian wedding coming back in form. So my next question is for Mr. Akshay, and this is to you've had an experience in sales and in operations. So what is it to what does it take to have a nice corporate career in food and beverage with, and what are the diverse experiences that young professionals should gain during their industrial exposure?
Thank you for that question, Nishant. Irrespective of which division or which vertical you are, having the right outlook and realigning your aims and objectives uh, to the company's overall aim and objective is the number one crucial aspect to any career. Having said that, a good background from a great college like IHMA uh, helps you uh, with the tools for the ever evolving world and marketplace. It gives you the outlook in order to perform and the cutting edge up against your rest of your competitors. Uh, from food and beverage to sales, when I was in food and beverage, the only most important thing was customer experience, customer satisfaction. But as I graduated into revenue and then into sales, the most important thing is owner satisfaction, which comes through money. GOP. That is what the game's name is. So as long as you're driving in profitability or top line, depending on their debt structure, okay, you will keep them happy. They will empower you with tools, solutions, and to explore your dreams or your strategy, and that is going to drive your business or your career forward. So yes, the most important thing to your question is outlook is very important. Stay focused, stay sharp, stay ahead of the game.
I think we got a new one. Stay focused, stay sharp. Yes, I think this is a great conversation we've had, and we are in time. I think Rushad sir has just one more question. I think I'm going to open it out to you guys all over again. That consumer behavior still is like the key. So how is it that how fast are we able to adapt to these customer patterns, and do we see have we become more agile, and have we become more acceptable to accommodating customer uh, patterns that keep changing? So, and how are we doing it? Is there like a magic trick or recipe that everybody has that, okay, now when I see a change in pattern, I'm gonna adapt? So this is an open question. Anybody can.
Okay, if I may take that question. Uh, Customer behavior has evolved incredibly from the pre-COVID era to the post-unlock era. Um, with the vast availability of venues, opportunities to host events, and for a ever thirsty market of hoteliers, it has driven down rates, given larger scope for negotiation, and hence I'm going to give you a very tactical answer than a strategic answer to this. For example, in my humble opinion, my experience, prior to the COVID, probably a social event would take about 4 to 7 days to negotiate and close. Well, now it takes close to about 20 to 30 days. That's nearly a month. While at the same time, a particular social query at a Four Seasons per se, let's say only catering only query, during the pre-COVID era would drive about 20 to 40 lakhs worth of business. Today, it drives at least a month. 3 months back, would drive only about a lakh to 2 lakhs. With APCs falling by nearly 50%, right from 2,500 for a very mediocre event. Now that same mediocre event drives about 15 to 1,600 rupees plus taxes. So yes, apart from that, what is most important is your forecastability. For example, social events earlier used to have a trend where leads used to flow in probably 6 to 8 months out before the event and would gradually peak at about 4 months before the event, right? Today, it's as close as 4 days prior to the event. And we see a higher intra-month pickup than entering the month with great business on books. So that is the evolution. So as the query size shrinks, the negotiation time increases, it's going to take that much time away from your sales managers to close a particular query. So then rather than cutting costs in terms of labor, this is a time that uh, hotel management firms need to invest in personnel and train them to negotiate as if their lives depended on it. Thank you.
Great. That's a great insight. We have another question from Shweta Agarwal. She says, how human resources management has changed in the event industry in the current situation. So it's open. Anyone can take that.
Maybe I can answer Shweta's question. Human resource management in the event industry. So there was initially this trend of, anybody can get into events. There used to be a tent wala, and there used to be a caterer, and there used to be, the rest of the lot. But today it has streamlined so much, and it's become so professional that nothing can move without a serious bunch of trainings. Nothing can move without an educational degree. Nothing can move without certain skills that are either inherent, or that can be an attitude that can be cultivated amongst your team members. And one has to constantly keep motivating people. It's not very different from the hotel industry. I started with a team of 3 people, and today we're as big as 15 people, and each one has their strengths. And we've really focused on pre-briefings, and we're really focused on a lot of trainings during down season. So as glamorous as it may seem, it's extremely like it's really full of grind, and you really have to get down and dirty. And interestingly, to Mr. Kavina's question on how does one identify patterns that are suddenly changing so fast, I feel our generation is extremely agile, and I'm really proud of that. And with the internet becoming such a big thing, we have people who will sit with us in meetings with Pinterest videos and Pinterest photos, and things, articles from wedding blogs, and what the Ambanis have done, and what like the Agarwals have done, and what Hero Honda has done, and the Munjals have done. And so one has to constantly stay on top of these things. I think someone who walks into a meeting not prepared, without research, is already setting up for failure. So again, as glamorous as it may sound, there's a lot of hard work that goes on in the back end. Thanks, Nishant. I hope that answers Shweta's question, though.
Yeah, I think so. Varun also would want to add how creating a niche is also as important in large scale events. So how do you manage consumer behavior? Yes, I think so. It answers yes.
I think Varun is mute.
Varun, you're on mute. Varun.
Sorry. Yeah, so I think as rightly as Nanki had said, with the emergence of the internet and globalization, customer trends and habits have obviously evolved and changed, especially in food and beverage and catering. Like I had said, how we've introduced pop-up restaurant dining concepts. So now customers want brands from all across the world, be it 3-star Michelin restaurants, 2-star Michelin restaurants, to come and cater to them at weddings and events. So I think the trend in terms of food and beverage and catering is evolving day by day. And the key is to obviously be creative and evolve yourself, obviously day by day, keeping in mind the customer expectations and the global trends in your industry. Thank you, Nishant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Varun. I think that brings us to the end of our event, and I would like to hand it over to Ocean to give us a vote of thanks, and we hope to see you.
Thank you, Nishant. So, on behalf of the students and faculty of IHM Aurangabad, I would like to thank all the panelists for their involvement and their willingness to take part in today's webinar. I would also like to thank our support team led by Mr. Zakirullah and digital team led by Smita Parmar in helping us produce the Thursday talk at IHM Aurangabad. Finally, a big thank you to the audience who have joined us today. We will be back next Thursday with another interesting panel discussion in our series of renewing resurgence. Until then, stay safe, everybody. Goodbye and good night. Thank you.